The Apple Watch Series 4 was released in 2018, making it a major redesign for the Apple Watch at the time. However, since the introduction of the Apple Watch Series 4, the Apple Watch has undergone a lot of different changes internally and externally. Now, newer Apple Watches have a better display, better GPS, an always-on display, and much faster processors. However, the Apple Watch Series 4 carries over a lot of the major features that the Apple Watch has, such as workout tracking and just general smartwatch stuff. So, today we're going to be taking a look at the Apple Watch Series 4 to see how it holds up nearly 5 years later. Hey, welcome to the TC. My name's David, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Apple Watch Series 4 in 2023, and we're going to be seeing if it's still worth using today. So to begin us off, I'm going to split up the video in multiple different chapters, and these chapters are going to be different sections of the review. So if you're looking for something in particular, you can skip to the different chapters below, and I'll put it in the description. And the 4 different chapters we're going to have is design and display, performance and usability, battery, and features. So you can skip to whichever section you'd like to see, or you can watch through the whole review. It's up to you. So the Apple Watch Series 4 design and display is the first chapter that we're going to be discussing. And the design of the Apple Watch is fairly similar to what we have today, especially when you look at something like the Apple Watch SE. It's basically the same exact design. Now, the Apple Watch Series 4 has rounded edges along the display, and that makes it seem a lot bigger than the older 42mm Apple Watches from just the past year, which would be like the Series 3 and below. Because we have the rounder edges, it does make it feel like a much more modern watch. And I think that was one of the biggest changes that the Series 4 brought. Just having that bigger display made it feel a lot more modern and a lot more like the newer Apple Watch designs that we have today even. If you look at a Series 4, compare it to an SE or something like that, honestly, you're probably not going to be able to tell a difference. One way that you can tell a difference between a Series 4 and the Apple Watch SE is if you look at the crown. The crown has a metallic surface on it, and that's because this Series 4 was the first Apple Watch to introduce the ECG. Now, the metallic look is just an ECG connector. If you look at something like an Apple Watch SE, it's just going to be aluminum because it doesn't have the ECG. Now, the design of the Apple Watch Series 4 is a lot more rounded and curved, I'd say, over something like the Series 3. It doesn't have that very boxy shape, and because of that, it does sit pretty comfortably on your arm. It's also thinner, and because of that, it honestly just feels a lot better on your wrist than something like a Series 3. The crown, I've noticed, sticks out quite a bit more as well than the Series 3, and then also on the side of the watch, the side button is flush with the body now. I think that Apple did this to avoid any accidental presses, or maybe it was just to make it look better, but I do notice that when I'm working out, for instance, I will accidentally press the crown and engage Siri, so it's kind of annoying that it's so pronounced, but you can't complain too much, I guess. The display on the Apple Watch Series 4 is also quite a bit brighter, and that's about 1000 nits of total peak brightness, and it wasn't until this year with the Series 9 that the Apple Watch was able to receive a brightness upgrade up to 2000 nits. So yeah, I mean, the Series 4 has held up pretty well in regard to actually being able to display itself in outdoor sun, especially when you compare it to newer Apple Watches, because most of the Apple Watches have been at 1000 nits for years now, and honestly, it hasn't really been an issue. But if you are looking for something brighter, then I guess you can look at something like the Series 9 or the Apple Watch Ultra. The side of the Apple Watch Series 4 also has the speaker cutouts. And if you notice, the speaker cutouts are split up into 2 different cutouts, and as a result, it actually does sound quite a bit louder than something like the Series 3. Because of the larger speaker and the larger cutouts, you get 50% more volume out of these speakers over the Series 3. So that's quite a sizable bump, and honestly, you can tell the difference when you're on something like a phone call, or if you're using something like the water eject feature to eject the water after you've submerged it in water or exposed it to a lot of water. Honestly, I think that was a really big upgrade, and it makes it a lot more usable if you're trying to listen to someone on a phone call. There's also a mic right beside the crown and the side button, and from my experience with phone calls, The other people say that I sound like I'm using a phone, so I think that the microphone on the Apple Watch Series 4 is pretty good. Obviously, you won't get the same kind of noise canceling that you get out of using your phone, but it is manageable, and honestly, I think that you can get away with using the Apple Watch for a phone call if you really needed to. On the bottom of the Series 4 is a ceramic surface, and there's also sapphire crystal. So if you look at the bottom of the Apple Watch, the actual sensor is made out of ceramic, and then all of the surrounding parts of it are a sapphire. So what that means is that even though I've been wearing this watch for how many years now, there's not really any scratches underneath there because it's such a durable material. Now, if you look at something like the display of the Apple Watch, the glass is a lot more scratched and banged up because of, normal wear and tear, but also because it is a regular Ion X glass display. Now, if you have the aluminum models, you have the glass display, but if you have the stainless steel models or anything above, then you get a sapphire crystal. And the sapphire crystal is a lot more resilient to any kind of scratches. So if that's something that concerns you, you might want to be looking at something like the stainless steel models. Obviously, this also applies to any of the newer Apple Watch designs. So if you get something like a Series 5, a 6, 7, 8, 9, they're all going to have a glass display if you opt for the aluminum models. So that's something to consider. Now, honestly, does that really make a huge difference? Not really in usability, but it is a bit annoying if you've owned the watch for a while and you have a bunch of micro scratches and deep gashes on it, then yeah, it can get a little annoying, but I mean, that's just using a watch, right? It's gonna end up getting scratches, it's gonna end up getting micro scratches and stuff like that, but honestly, it's not too bad. It doesn't really affect the usability, it just makes it not as pretty, I guess. That being said though, the Apple Watch Series 4 has been a pretty durable watch. I've worn it on washing the car multiple times, I've worn it while doing pretty strenuous activities, I've worn it while doing hiking in Yosemite. It's been banged up against rocks. It's been banged up against the car when I'm underneath working on it. So for all of that altogether, over how many years of usage, honestly, it's held up really well. And I think that you can get away with using your Apple Watch without a case, honestly. I don't really see the need to keep a case on your watch, but I mean, you do you, right? So the next chapter is going to be on performance and usability of the Apple Watch Series 4. So the Apple Watch Series 4 first introduced the S4 chip, and the S4 chip was the first 64-bit processor in the Apple Watch. Now, this means that it is quite a bit faster than the Series 3, and because of that, you're going to notice a pretty huge performance increase if you're coming from anything older than the Series 4. That being said, though, the Series 4 Apple Watch is honestly about as quick as the Series 5, because the Series 5 uses a variation of the Series 4's chip, just that the Series 5 has a always-on altimeter and a compass. So they're basically neck and neck in terms of performance. The Apple Watch Series 4 comes standard with 16 gigabytes of storage as well, to store any local files or music and photos, stuff like that. But honestly, I've never really realized storage being an issue for me using the Apple Watch, but I don't really store music or photos locally on the watch. I'm usually using my phone with me, so I've never really had the need to store music onto my watch and listen to it while I'm outside. But if that is something that concerns you, 16 gigabytes seems like it'd be more than enough to store everything you want. Even with all my apps, I'm using about 8 gigabytes, so that's about half the storage, and honestly, I've never seen it really become an issue. But if you do want to have more items, then you might have to upgrade to a newer watch. The Series 9 and Ultra 2 have 64 gigabytes of storage, and the Series 8 and the first gen Ultra have 32 gigabytes. So if you do need to store a lot more photos or videos, or actually, can you even store videos? I don't think so. But if you need to store stuff like music locally, then yeah, you might want to look at something like the newer Apple Watches, since they do have significantly more storage. That being said though, the Apple Watch Series 4 honestly doesn't really have too much of a hiccup when it comes to performance. I think it's more than usable today even, and you won't be disappointed by its performance. Yeah, it's slower than something like the newer Apple Watches, but it gets you through your day like nothing, like if you use something like a Series 3, you're really going to feel that performance difference. That being said though, this Apple Watch Series 4 is more than enough when it comes to performance. I think that the S4 chip and W3 wireless chip has held up really great over the past 5 years, and I don't think that performance is going to be an issue. If you're coming from something like a Series 1, 2, or 3, then you're really going to feel a huge performance increase over those Apple Watches. So honestly, I think this is like the iPhone 6S of the Apple Watch designs. It's really been like the really great performance for the price. So yeah, performance is not an issue with the Apple Watch Series 4. The next chapter I want to talk about is the battery life. Now, the battery on the Series 4 is rated for the original 18 hours that most of the Apple Watches have, but because of the Apple Watch's battery health degradation over time, this number is going to decrease the more and more you use it over the years. So I'm a very, very long-term user of the Apple Watch Series 4. I've had this watch since 2020, but it was originally my brother's in 2019. So it's had about 4 years of actual usage. And due to that, the battery health has decreased quite a bit. I'm at 81% on the Apple Watch Series 4, and because of that, my battery is enough to get me through a day barely. So if I'm using the watch for any kind of workout outside, then yeah, I'm gonna kill it probably around 3 o'clock. And that's not really ideal for something that you want to be wearing on your wrist the entire day. So make sure that you do check the battery health of a Series 4 that you have, or if you're looking at buying one, because anything below, I'd say like 87%, it's really going to start to show like how fast the battery goes on this watch. That being said, if you do want to get your Apple Watch battery replaced, Apple does do replacements after it's reached below 80%, but it's for $100. So you have to gauge whether or not you want to use that $100 to replace your battery, or if you'd rather put that towards a new Apple Watch. Personally, I've actually already put that money towards a new Apple Watch. I've invested it into an Apple Watch Ultra 2, which I'll be doing a video on sometime soon. And yeah, honestly, if you're looking at getting a battery replacement, I would probably just look at replacing the watch altogether, because it's not really worth putting $100 into a watch that might be getting only one more software update. But if you already own a Series 4 and you really like it, then hey, you know, if $100 is better than spending $200 or $300 on a new watch, then go for it. However, I would say that keep an eye out on deals, especially right now, because you can get a Series 8 from Target for about $250 for a 45mm, and I think that's a really great deal. So if you're looking at getting an Apple Watch or fixing or replacing your Apple Watch Series 4, definitely look at the deals right now, especially that we're approaching Black Friday. I typically end my days with the Series 4 around 8 or 9%, which isn't ideal at all. So yeah, definitely consider battery health if you're looking at the Apple Watch Series 4, or any Apple Watch for that matter. The lower the battery health, obviously, the less time that you're going to be able to use the watch throughout the day. But other than that, if I did still have a good battery, it would last me through the whole day, and I'd still have extra charge by the end of the day, maybe around like 30%. So that just shows you how big of a difference that battery health can make on how long that you can use your watch. The final chapter that I want to discuss is the features of the Apple Watch Series 4 as when they came out, and like just kind of dedicated to the Series 4 as the new features of the watch. Obviously, one of the biggest new features of the Apple Watch Series 4 was having the ECG connector. Now the ECG lets you take an ECG, and all you have to do is have the Apple Watch on your wrist and use your index finger on your other hand and put it onto the digital crown. And it takes an ECG, it takes about 30 seconds, and yeah, you can get your results from the ECG and it shows up in your iPhone. It works pretty great. I haven't really had any issues with that. Now, keep in mind that you do have to be 22 years old or older to be able to use the ECG, because that's how Apple cleared it with the FDA. So just keep that in mind. Another really niche feature that the Series 4 introduced that I'm kind of used to in every Apple Watch now is haptic feedback when turning the digital crown. So when you're turning the digital crown, you get a little bit of like these clicking sounds. That makes the crown feel a lot more mechanical than something like a Series 3, which freely turns around when you're spinning it. It's just a little neat kind of feature, but I really like it, and I really felt like it's been a huge kind of difference between the Series 3 and the Series 4, and it kind of makes it feel a lot more modern in that regard. I know it's silly, it's such a small thing, but I really like it. And another thing with the Series 4, and basically any Apple Watch up to the newest Apple Watches, is that, of course, you're able to use bands all the way from the first generation Apple Watch. And I think that's a really great thing. Having that backwards compatibility means that you're able to purchase old watch bands Or if you're shopping at something like Marshalls or TJ Maxx, sometimes you can find actual genuine Apple Watch bands for like $15 when they normally cost like $50. So being able to use any Apple Watch bands as long as it fits the same size for your watch, it's a really good benefit. I have Apple Watch bands that are 42 millimeters, some that are 44, some that are 45. And of course I have the Apple Watch band for my Ultra, which is 49 millimeters, but they fit perfectly on my 44 millimeter Apple Watch Series 4. So that's just an example of how you can use so many different bands on your Apple Watch. And of course there's a huge aftermarket band market. I'm kind of losing the word that I need to find here, but they have a lot of different Apple Watch bands basically. And as long as you buy a size that's around the same size that you need for your Apple Watch, so like think of it as this: the 42 millimeter Apple Watch will fit the 44, the 45, and the 49 Apple Watch designs. If you want the 40 millimeter Apple Watch Series 4, you're going to have to use the 38 millimeter Apple Watch bands, the 40 millimeter, the 41 millimeter, and that's basically it. You can't really use the bigger bands because a little bit of the band casing, I guess, on the edges where the band connects, it's going to be showing. So keep that in mind. But I mean, you can use them, it's just going to look a little silly. The Apple Watch Series 4 was also the first one to have fall detection. And this is really great for if you have any older folks using the Apple Watch Series 4 or any of the newer Apple Watches, because having that fall detection is just kind of like a peace of mind that if they do take a fall, then they can contact you or contact emergency services. And yeah, it's just having that peace of mind, I guess. Another thing that the Apple Watch Series 4 introduced was the ability to have hearing or like decibel meter. So you can see how much decibels your environment that you're in is. And based off of that, you can see if it's like a dangerous environment to be listening to or if it's a safe environment. So like if you're outside and you're in the city, for example, I think Apple has this example. If you're walking by a construction site, the sound of a jackhammer is damaging to your hearing. And your watch will tell you that. It'd be like, oh, it's over 90 decibels. That's really damaging to your hearing. If you spend like 30 minutes in that environment, you're going to have some temporary hearing loss. So yeah, it's just a nice little feature, and it helps you realize like, oh wow, there's a lot of things in my life that is actually quite loud and is damaging to my hearing. So just having that feature is a little kind of nice thing to think about. Oh, I should probably, get out of this environment so I can protect my hearing. So here's the rundown on the Apple Watch Series 4 and what we've covered on this review. We've covered things like the design and the display, how it has the newer design of the Apple Watches, and it's even the same design that we have today on the Apple Watch Series, and it's even the same design that we have today on the Apple Watch SE. The performance of the Apple Watch Series 4 is also quite great today, and it's not really any issue, especially when you're using it just for regular smartwatch things. And the battery of the Apple Watch Series 4 is really dependent on the battery health of the watch itself. So if you have a better battery health, of course it's going to last a lot longer. And keep in mind that Apple does do Apple Watch battery replacements for about $100 once it reaches below 80% on battery health. However, if it was me, I would just rather put that money towards a new Apple Watch because it's quite an old watch now, and I think that this might be the last year of support for the Series 4. So the Apple Watch Series 4 also has a lot more newer features, but it also lacks a lot of the newer features that were released over the past 5 years now on the newer Apple Watches, such as the always-on display, the blood oxygen sensor, the better GPS, the faster chips, stuff like that. And honestly, if you're using something like a Series 4, you don't necessarily need to upgrade right now because, I mean, if those features are not of any concern to you, then your Apple Watch is still functioning fine. It's basically an Apple Watch SE in that regard. But if you do want stuff like the better displays, the bigger displays, the better battery, the blood oxygen sensor, the always-on display, the ability to go deeper depths in water with your Apple Watch, stuff like that, then yeah, you might want to consider getting a newer Apple Watch. But if you're using a Series 4 and it's working out for you and you have no issues with the battery, then yeah, I mean, you can probably keep it for this next year or even 2. So yeah, that's my review on the Apple Watch Series 4. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you guys have an Apple Watch Series 4, let me know in the comments down below. And how do you like it? Also, if you guys have any more questions, do let me know in the comments down below, and I'll try to get back to every single comment that I get. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you'd like to see more content just like this, consider subscribing to the channel. I'm really thankful that we hit over 1,000 subscribers recently, so hopefully we can get to the next milestone. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.